From Washington's shutdown drama to President Trump's discount drug plan and a military power shift in Europe. Plus, in today's podcast extra, the Trump administration takes on Minnesota over girls' sports, 30,000 young people baptized in a single weekend, and the Ohio man who pretended to be a high school student for over a year. And here's today's trivia question. Where in the world is Pink City? It's Wednesday, October 1st. This is the Flyover Podcast. Welcome to the Flyover Podcast, taking you above the noise for an unbiased, high-altitude view of today's headlines with daily coverage that's honest and refreshing. Let's cruise the news and land the facts. Hello, everyone. Happy 1st of October, and welcome back to the Flyover Podcast. Where did this year go so far? I'm your weekday host, Ayla Brown, and let me be the first to welcome you if this is the first time finding the Flyover Podcast. Let's take off with the biggest headlines of the day. The federal government was set to officially shut down just before midnight last night unless an agreement was reached in the Senate. Democrats wanted new money for healthcare subsidies added to the package. Now the White House has already warned that a shutdown could trigger widespread layoffs and even irreversible impacts on some government programs. President Trump has the authority to close what he considers non-essential services to save money. But just to be clear, military service, federal law enforcement, the post office, and air traffic control will all keep running, though you might see some delays. Benefits like Social Security and Medicare also continue. Where you'll notice changes is in places like national parks, federal museums, and other government buildings, which have closed in past shutdowns. And of course, both sides are pointing fingers. Democrats say they refuse to keep the government open without major health care subsidies, while Republicans argue that Democrats themselves used to demand clean funding bills with no extras when they were in power. GOP leaders say Democrats are shutting things down just to score political points by opposing President Trump. Meanwhile, the president announced a big deal with Pfizer to cut prescription drug prices as part of his new TrumpRx plan. The deal creates a government-run website where discounted medications will be available starting in early 2026. Medicaid patients will see the savings first, but the site will eventually open to all Americans. Pfizer says the plan covers most of its primary care drugs and some specialty brands with discounts averaging 50%, and in some cases as high as 85%. As part of the deal, Pfizer will move manufacturing into the U.S., and in return, they'll get a 3-year exemption from Trump's new 100% import tariffs. The administration says this all falls under the Most Favored Nation plan, meant to make sure Americans pay prices more in line with what other patients in wealthy countries pay. And let's wrap up with a snapshot of Europe's military power. According to new data, Russia now leads the continent with 1.3 million active troops, while Ukraine comes in second with 900,000. Together, those two forces outnumber all of NATO's European armies combined. Among NATO countries, Turkey has the largest active force at just over 355,000 troops, followed by Poland with about 202,000 and the UK at nearly 185,000. For context, the U.S. military has around 1.3 million active personnel worldwide. And don't forget countries like Finland and Estonia. While their active forces are small, they maintain significant reserves, a sign of how Europe's defense posture is shifting in response to the war in Ukraine. See the full list of Europe's military power in the show notes below. Here are your top political headlines. We begin in the Pentagon, where Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth used a rare gathering of hundreds of top U.S. military officers to announce sweeping changes. He rolled out higher fitness and grooming standards, including a return to a, quote, highest male standard for combat roles, and indicated there would be fewer women in frontline positions under the new rules. Critics say changing the standards could significantly reduce female representation in combat roles, which in some branches had just been normalized. Meanwhile, in the Middle East, reports say Hamas and other Palestinian factions are leaning toward accepting President Trump's Gaza peace plan, and they're expected to formally present their response today to mediators from Egypt and Qatar. Early leaks suggest their acceptance hinges on Israel agreeing to a ceasefire and hostage release. Back in the United States, President Trump just won a $24.5 million settlement from YouTube over the 2021 suspension of his account. Of that, $22 million will go toward the Trust for the National Mall, partly funding his planned White House ballroom. And finally, Trump's approval numbers are inching upward. The latest New York Times Siena University poll shows his approval at 43%, up 1 point, thanks in part to a bump in independent support. Here are some podcast extra stories just for you. First up, a big Title IX ruling out of Washington. The Trump administration says Minnesota violated federal law by allowing a transgender athlete to play girls softball. Officials argue that the pitcher's dominant performance gave her team an unfair edge in winning a state championship. Minnesota now has 10 days to change its policies or risk losing federal funding. State Attorney General Keith Ellison has already fired back with a countersuit. And it's not just Minnesota. Similar lawsuits are underway in California and Maine. It's another sign that high school sports are becoming a major flashpoint in the national debate over Title IX and transgender athletes. Meanwhile, CBS News says young men in Gen Z are fueling a wave of religious revival. For the first time in decades, men under the age of 25 are more likely to attend church than women the same age. Pastors point to pandemic struggles, the pressures of social media, and just a broader search for meaning. You could see that momentum on display at Baptize America, where more than 650 churches came together nationwide. The event ended with 30,000 people being baptized in the ocean. And finally, a wild story out of Ohio. A 24-year-old man managed to convince an entire town he was a 16-year-old high school student for more than a year. His name is Anthony Emmanuel Labrador Sierra, originally from Venezuela, and he pulled it off using a fake birth certificate. He lived with a local couple, even had legal guardians, and went to class every day. The ruse only fell apart when his ex-fiancée, who shares a child with him, called the house where he was staying. Police later found a burner phone, a fake ID, and even a firearm in his room. He's since pleaded guilty to lying on immigration and gun purchase forms. Wow. Still to come, what happens when a political memoir sells fast and anchors its own side? Plus, Simpsons fans get a sequel, and being self-centered just got a bit of a rebrand. Thanks to our sponsor, Cozy Earth. Cozy Earth's whole mission is to transform your 5 to 9 into the most comfortable part of your day. And let me tell you, they've nailed it. At my house, bedtime can be a little bit of a circus with 2 very small children. But once the house quiets down, sliding into Cozy Earth's viscose from bamboo sheets has become my little sanctuary. They're temperature regulating and so soft like you would not believe. Like a 5-star hotel bed, but in your own home. And if you want to up your comfort game beyond the bedroom, their bubble cuddle blanket is amazing. It's got this plush textured design that just makes it stylish and cozy. And the best part, you can try Cozy Earth risk-free. They give you 100 nights to see if you love them, plus a 10-year warranty. So here's the deal. Head to CozyEarth.com and use my code FLYOVER for up to 20% off. And if you see a post-purchase survey, make sure to let them know that you heard about Cozy Earth right here on the Flyover podcast. Because home isn't just where you live, it's how you feel. Let's go home with Cozy Earth. In finance, Spotify founder Daniel Ek is stepping down as CEO by the end of the year. He'll stay on as executive chairman while the company shifts leadership to not 1, but 2 CEOs who will share the role moving forward. Over in energy, ExxonMobil says it's cutting about 2,000 jobs worldwide. It's part of a big reorganization effort, and it comes as other oil giants are also trimming staff while crude prices slide. And in autos, Ford CEO Jim Farley says he expects demand for electric vehicles to be cut in half starting next month. Why? Because the federal tax incentives for EV buyers expire today. And without that discount, Farley warns sales could stall. Here's how the stocks did yesterday. The Nasdaq rose 0.30%, S&P 500 gained 0.41%, and the Dow Jones Industrial Average added 0.18%. In commodities, Bitcoin dipped slightly, down 0.03%, and gold jumped 1.64% to $3,883 per ounce. Big mover of the day, Wolfspeed surged 29% after the chip maker successfully exited Chapter 11 bankruptcy with a much lighter debt load. In sports, big news out of the NHL. The Minnesota Wild just locked in star winger Kirill Kaprizov with an 8-year, $136 million extension. That makes him the highest paid player in league history. Over in baseball, the MLB wildcard round got underway yesterday. The Detroit Tigers edged out the Guardians 2-1 in the American League, while in the National League, the Cubs beat the Padres 3-1 thanks to Chicago pitchers retiring 13 straight batters to close it out. And a tough break in the NFL, though. Tyreek Hill is out for the season. The Dolphins receiver tore multiple ligaments and dislocated his knee in Monday night's game against the Jets. He already had surgery yesterday, but doctors say his year is done. And in other baseball news, the Texas Rangers and manager Bruce Bochy have officially parted ways. Bochy had led them to a World Series title in 2023 and finishes his run as the 6th winningest manager in MLB history, with 4 championships under his belt, more than any other manager in the last 60 years. Finally, looking ahead in college football, the 2028 national championship game will be played at the Caesars Superdome in New Orleans. The city is no stranger to the big stage. It last hosted the title game back in 2020. In tech news, DoorDash just rolled out a delivery robot nicknamed Dot. This little machine can cruise at 20 miles an hour and haul up to 30 pounds of food. Testing has already started in the Phoenix area, where the company says it could help shorten delivery times and cut costs. Meanwhile, on the space front, scientists are testing Mars rovers inspired by tumbleweeds. Instead of engines, these rovers are designed to literally roll across the red planet, letting wind gusts carry them for hundreds of miles while gathering environmental data. Researchers say it could be a cheaper and more energy-efficient way to explore Mars. And here's one from archaeology. A team in Saudi Arabia uncovered 12,000-year-old animal carvings in the Nefud Desert. Among them is a strikingly detailed camel etched into a cliff face about 127 feet above ground. Experts believe these carvings show early humans' deep connection with the animals they relied on for survival. You can see pictures of this in the show notes below. Here are a few additional headlines we thought you should know about. First up, Kamala Harris's new memoir, 107 Days, is crushing it. She sold 350,000 copies in the first week, putting it firmly on track to be this year's best-selling memoir. But it hasn't all been applause. Democrats are already bristling at her sharp criticism of party leaders. Next, long-awaited sequel alert, The Simpsons movie is getting a follow-up nearly 20 years after the original. It's set for a theatrical release in July of 2027, so the weekend plans will be lit again for Springfield fans. And finally, a twist on what self-centered means. Researchers now argue that being a little self-centered can actually support mental health when it's grounded in knowing your needs and setting boundaries and staying connected to what matters most. They suggest small, intentional practices to stay rooted, not detached. So if you feel like you might be a little self-centered and want to learn more about that, the link is in the show notes. Here are the results of yesterday's poll question. If your health and safety were assured, which feat would you want to accomplish? 24% said fly a fighter jet. 22% said you would rather read the Flyover in bed. Oh, thank you for that. That's amazing. 19% said walk on the moon. 12% said skydive from a plane. 8% said dive to the Titanic. Another 8% said summit Mount Everest. And 7% said other. Thanks to everyone who voted. You guys are the best. And here's today's poll question. Which music service do you mainly use? Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, YouTube Music, Pandora, other, or none? Maybe you like the radio, or you still listen to CDs or cassettes or 8-tracks. Let me know. For me, it is Spotify all the way. And shout out to all of our listeners to the Flyover podcast on Spotify and all of the other podcast services. We appreciate each and every one of you. You can vote in the show notes below, and I'll read the answers in tomorrow's episode. Here's the trivia question. Where in the world is the Pink City? That is Jaipur, the capital of Rajasthan in India. Back in 1876, the local ruler Maharaja Sewai Ram Singh II had the whole city painted pink to welcome the Prince of Wales, who was visiting on behalf of Queen Victoria. In India, pink is a symbol of hospitality, so it was a way of showing warmth to their royal guest. The tradition stuck, and now, today, Jaipur's pink buildings are a huge draw for tourists from all around the world. That's awesome. I should have worn a pink shirt today. Anyways, thank you everyone who tuned into today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and tell a friend about the Flyover podcast. I'll be back tomorrow with more headlines. Until then, thanks for flying with us.